Poetry moved me so much and seemed to speak so much to what we do and what we know and what we understand and are trying to accomplish in political science that you need to hear him. And he brought Brandon, and Brandon read his piece of poetry to me, and in that moment I knew all of our lives would be richer if he would share it with us today. So I've asked him to do that. Brandon?
Before I start, I'd like to thank Dr. Condit and Dr. Augenbaugh for inviting me here, and also for Jeff for introducing me to them. And I'll just read. When I was a kid, MLK was my hero. Like, MLK was my hero. Icon of the civil rights movement, leader for racial equality. I wanted to be just like him, speak out, fight for those who didn't have the right to speak, to have our fists be the flags of revolution that fly from Cairo to West Bank, from Hong Kong to Mexico City, from St. Louis to Cleveland. One day, my mom heard from a friend that I was penning political posts on Facebook. Nhokoi, she said, the sounds of my Vietnamese name read in a hushed tone of caution. Be careful someone doesn't hear you. To her, my words were keys to a prison cell, but one that locked the gates instead of opening them. She told me she was fearful that one day a knock would come at the door that no one would answer before our green wooden door shot down and a gang of gunmen poured through. My mother told me she was scared that the rifles would be pointed at us like the Grim Reaper scythe, that they would drag me out the door, my knees painting red lines on the sidewalk. I laughed. Mom, what are you talking about? You're overreacting. I'll be fine. I didn't understand back then. I didn't know what she had seen. See, I'm the son of Vietnamese refugees who fled the communist Việt Cộng. My mother saw her father taken from her home and put into a prison for a crime he never committed, stolen away from her like the futures that the war robbed of my motherland. My father saw his father put into a re-education camp, saw his city fall in stacks of smoke, saw his family starve in front of him. My father saw the void beneath the boat that carried 40 refugees over the ghosts of 300,000 other boat people who drowned before reaching the shores of a country that didn't want them. Freedom to them is expensive. It costs a lot, and even after you've paid the price in 2 million lives, you still aren't guaranteed anything. In high school, I got in an argument with a dude over racism in America. I told him about $234,000 wealth gap between black and white families, about how 74% of Latino kids are in segregated schools, about how non-white majority schools receive $799 less money per student than majority white schools. His nose scrunched up in disgust by the putrid smell of institutionalized discrimination that he would rather toss into someone else's backyard instead of cleaning up himself. His only response was, if you hate America so much, then just leave, as if America was a house of cards that's so weak that the very air used to criticize our shortcomings would lead to its collapse. Like my words were more dangerous than trigger-crazy cops that strike fear into poor communities and bullets into the bodies of black men. Where's your patriotism, I'm asked? Why do you advocate a hate America first mentality as if pointing out the fact before all of our eyes was an act of treason? Some people think that teaching our children about the injustices that our American ancestors endured is anti-American. Why are you focusing on the bad? What about all the good things, like liberty, freedom, George Washington crossing the Delaware and 4th of July barbecues? My friend, what about slavery? What about internment camps? What about reservations, Jim Crow, Middle Passage, glass ceilings, ghettos, redlining, sweatshops, police brutality, wealth gaps, Islamophobia, homophobia? If you hate America so much, then why don't you just leave? Because that's not what America means. I'll tell you what American means. American is 1,000 students getting beat down and arrested in Birmingham, the fire in their hearts growing fiercer and hotter as the water of the hoses peel off their skin. America is the cries of millions of women emanating from Seneca Falls, from kitchens and nurseries and mills and sweatshops all over the country, culminating into a tsunami that inundated the female dry halls of Congress. America is picket signs of thousands of textile and auto workers linked arm in arm as they stood outside their factories, strengthened by phantoms of comrades who perished in jaws of metal monsters and factory fires. American is not deliberate short-term memory loss to history. It's not blindness to the elephants in the room or the boulders that lie in our way. American has never been accepting the status quo. It's always meant shooting for higher, for religious freedom, for suffrage, for abolition, for minimum wage, for safer working conditions, for racial equality. America has never been, well, it's better than it was before. Job well done, because our job is never done. We will never achieve a perfect utopia, but the second we stop trying, we will be living in the greatest dystopia. A patriotic American is not a flag-wielding, barbecue grilling, anthem singing sheep that blindly gives his loyalty to the government. A patriotic American is Malcolm X, Susan B. Anthony, Rosa Parks, Sitting Bull, MLK, Eleanor Roosevelt, Cesar Chavez, Gloria Steinem. Revolution is in our blood, all of our blood. It's been inherited through years of struggle, countless martyrs, excruciating oppression. My dad didn't spend a year in a refugee camp so his son could grow up in a society that keeps his fellow man down. Our country was born through the bloodshed and anarchy of the Enlightenment. Our country built on the backs of poor immigrants and enslaved blacks, connected by overworked and underpaid Chinese workers, fed by Mexican migrants who we refuse to grant citizenship to, all of them praying, working, dying for a day where their dreams are not encapsulated within the walls of their skull, but liberated into the reality of their descendants, free to paint their own canvas, free to write their own endings without someone else making edits to their story. My friends, you are their stories. You are their dreams manifested into flesh. Inside of you is the blood spilt in wars to liberate enslaved people. Inside of you is love used to break down hatred and courage that brought people to the streets. Inside of you is 300 years worth of struggle that our predecessors worked for. And I don't know about you, but I'll be damned if I let them down now.